Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to HitScan. Today we are sitting down with the newest member of the Overwatch League team, Custa, to talk about the sort of state of the game at the moment and where the meta is going to go. Specifically on some rumours that Dive is coming back, going off some scrim results from pro players in Korea. We can talk about how that's even possible, whether that's likely, and what's next for Overwatch. You can check out all of Custa's details in the description below, but let's get started. Without obviously shouting out any teams, what are the sort of weirdest hot takes that you've heard from what pro teams are sort of running or trying?
I've heard people are trying, I've heard Genji Dive has actually, Genji Pharah Dive, or like Pharah Dive has been like something that a lot of teams are experimenting with. So what OMS was playing in a way, I've heard some teams have had success for it. I think maybe the rumor was hearing that Korean Contenders is playing a lot of it. Which is very classic Korean Contenders, and just like Korean teams in general, is like, if they can ever go dive, they will. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're messing around with it, and if it'll be really curious to see if they're having success, because you'll see that translate to a lot of Overwatch League teams, because a lot of the Overwatch League teams firstly go to Korea for a lot of what they like to see in the meta. And on top of that, a lot of them been boot camping in Korea. So I'm really looking forward to the first stage and seeing what everyone ends up playing. Because, you know, Chengdu is a prime example of a team that if they can play Wrecking Ball, they probably will. So, and Pharah. So we'll see if they're still adopting that, or if people are playing this, you know, Breakable barriers comp.
How would that be allowed, I suppose? Like, how are teams being allowed to run dive now than before?
The comp that I isolated there isn't very good at dealing with Pharah Mercy and Wrecking Ball. They can deal with it, the Wrecking Ball, if the Wrecking Ball's, you know, doesn't play it very smart. But the only person who can really kill the Pharah in that comp is like the Baptiste Zen, because the Mei Hanzo, they can shoot from range, but there's very unreliable damage. So it gives the Pharah almost free reign, and it allows teams to sort of like maneuver around that. My problem becomes that if you have playing against a really good McCree, as I said in the Breakable Barriers tournament yesterday, asking just popped off on McCree. He switched to McCree and the Pharah just couldn't play the game. Anyone with a really good aim will shut down that Pharah, because unfortunately your Wrecking Ball can't just deal with the McCree, because there's a maid that still exists in the game. So there is a lot of push-pull in terms of strategies. So it'll be really interesting to see if people actually do try and run it. I think it is an inferior comp. I think it's more of one of those niche comps that is like built to catch someone off guard, but as soon as they work out the solution to the problem, it's really hard to come back from that.
Right, that makes sense. I was more curious about the Genji though. Like, Pharah, I can understand why she would be a Feast or Famine hero, but why not Tracer alongside her, or Sombra, or Doomfist? Like, what does Genji bring to the table there? Because he's a hero that people just think is not good and hasn't been good for like 3 years.
That's what I've heard as well. Like, when people say Genji, I'm like, okay, let's calm down a little bit. Like, because Genji just really struggles to get any value with all the things. So, but as I said, if anyone was going to pull out a Genji, it would be Korea, because they have such incredible Genji players. So I don't know if people are actually having success with it, or if the rumors are actually true. But I've heard some rumblings here and there. So honestly, I think it's about time. I'd love to see some Genji again. As much as I hate playing against Genji as a support player, you know, he is a lot of fun to watch, and you know, the incredible things that people can do in that hero is just always entertaining to watch.
With the patch that came out then, were you happy with it? Did it sort of go after the things that you were hoping would change in the game? And what other stuff would you like to see? Considering that Dive now has like a window, like granted we have said that it's not 100% coming back, it means that it's just more of an option, especially for people that are just playing like ladder competitive. Is this everything that you sort of hoped for, I guess?
I really like the change to shields. I think shields is like inherently one of the biggest issues that exists in Overwatch, because it makes it really hard for like certain characters to play if you just have shields. So I like the change, making them a lot weaker, so that it's actually a viable strategy to break them. With that said, I think Blizzard did a good job with the changes that they made, but they overlooked some things really like important. You know, the Baptiste, they made his gun significantly easier to shoot, but didn't change anything to do with his damage. So now, you know, you're seeing these supports just with absurd kills and stuff like that, because it's at the end of the day, it's a hit scans gun that's really easy to aim now. So I think that was overlooked. I think Mei needs, you know, a change to do with her left click. I think her left click is just way too strong right now that exists in the game. And Orisa, you know, everyone's always complained about the kit of Orisa, that she is so strong, but she's not actually fun to play. And they made her shield worse, and everyone was like, "Oh, great!" And then they buffed like 2 other aspects of it. They made it so that actually, I don't know if that made it to the game, but she moves faster when she shoots, and then her fortify is on cooldown more, so she's just more of a tank. And they gave her 50 armor. That was the one I was thinking of. So they gave her 50 extra armor, buffed armor, and they made her fortify on a 2-second lower cooldown. Well, of course, Orissa's still going to be good. Now she just doesn't rely on as much on her shield. And the thing that makes Orisa the strongest out of everything is she has a mini pull. That pull has so much utility. You can do so many things with that. And it's one of the reasons that this breakable barriers comps exists, because you can always displace people by using the suck. And it's one of the most important cooldowns that exists in the thing, and any good tank player is going to be calling that on cooldown and looking for picks.
I guess that's a good thing about being a support player, is that realistically all of the supports in the game you can run and get to top 500 playing them. Like Brigitte especially is one that sort of surprised a lot of people with how effective she can be. As a support player in general, that must be a good thing, right? That all of the heroes are viable. Some are better than others in certain situations and some come out on top overall, sure, but you can just one trick your way up to GM and top 500 playing Mercy off, for example.
Yeah, I think supports, other than Baptiste, who's a little overtuned, I think the support's actually in a really good spot. I think they all have their niches. I think they all have their value in certain things. We don't have any of those characters like when you say tanks with D.Va, which is just like, if you run D.Va, you're losing the game. Or, DPS, if you're running Soldier, you're losing the game. Support doesn't really have that right now. I think all of them can be very viable in their own rights in certain points, and honestly can be forced in any situation and still be okay. There's not many supports that get run, like unless you're running like Lucio Zen, which has the world's worst healing. You can pretty much run anything anywhere.
But that was like a dive lineup, so even then there's uses to it, right? That's just very fast, very aggressive. Why is that? Why is supports in a much more flexible, fluid place than tanks? DPS, you have more options, so it doesn't count, but that's the area that I think tank players really struggle with, is you have to play X and Y. Playing anything else is effectively throwing. And you see even like GM players been reported for playing anything but Orisa Sigma before.
And that's just because the game is very heavily dependent on, because of the way the game is played right now with the tanks and the Orisa, if you don't have those, your team is generally just at a massive disadvantage. Orisa is just so strong because of everything that I highlighted before, and as I said, Sigma's in a more of a place where it is adjustable. But if you're not playing those, you feel like, what are your other tanks going to be? Monkey Ball? It's like, yeah, well, what do our supports do? Or like, what does anyone else do in the game if you play Monkey Ball? I think tanks are very much determining the tempo of the game right now. So if you're not playing the correct ones, it's just very hard to keep up.
So penultimately then, what are your sort of hot takes going forward? Like any sort of random thing that you think could happen, and if it does, then you look amazing in like 6 months' time. So what do you think is going to surprise people going forward in Season 3?
I don't actually think I have any hot takes. I think a lot of the situation, my hot takes is, I want to see what happens to the game if they make the changes to Orisa, Baptiste, and Mei. I would be really interested if you change those 3 characters and made, let's say just Blizzard just came out and put all 3 of them in the ground, right? And they were just like, yeah, these characters suck now. They just changed the thing. I'd be really curious to see what the game looked like, because I couldn't even give you an educated guess of what it would look like. I think it would turn the whole thing on its head, and that's what I want to see. I've always been advocating for Blizzard. When a character's been strong for so long, I want them to just nerf it into the ground. And I know, they probably won't ever do that because it's not a very good casual thing, but I would love to see just Orisa just suck for a little bit. And, all that kind of... My biggest gripe over the last 3 years of Overwatch was the fact that D.Va has been the only off tank you've ever had to play for 3 years. So now I'm really glad that you're seeing this, variability in this off tank role and all these other players, getting to play these other characters. So that would be what I'm hoping. If for whatever reason the development team is listening to this, please just aggressively nerf things so that we can see some more exciting gameplay and some exciting metas of just things that are just so different to what we've been seeing.
I think most people have worked out what there is to work out with the sort of balance changes, but what do you think is going to be an important thing going forward that is going to maybe take time to work out?
The question I think that I'm trying to work out, and obviously because I'm not scrimming at the top level, it's really hard to know. And this has been one of the first times that I've ever like been out of the loop on it. Is Lucio Moira Reinhardt with the Orisa and Mei Hanzo or Mei Reaper, is that better than the Baptiste Zen? Or is it map dependent? Usually when these kind of things happen where it's like people are like, oh, it's map dependent, one usually comes out on top and everyone just starts running it everywhere. And that's what you've always seen in GOATs in all these situations. One thing usually comes out on top. And I want to see if that's going to happen again, or if, you know, there is going to be times in which both are able to be played. So only time will tell. And as I said, unfortunately, I don't have the insider knowledge on that one, but I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
And that's it for this time. Thank you very much for watching. Definitely check out Custa. It's amazing to see what he's going to do in the Overwatch League Season 3. Great character for the scene, very knowledgeable, and I just can't wait to see what he does. So do check him out. Thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you next time.